So when we give to people, people don't really know what to do sometimes, right? And there's some psychological studies showing that the need for reciprocity becomes huge. So how many of you tried to give away money where they just wouldn't take your money? I mean, raise your hand. Okay, interesting. More men than women. Okay, that's worth observing. Okay, and so because probably there's concerns for little kids or whatever. But a grown girl wouldn't take it.
Girls wouldn't take it.
Oh, funny. But there's that need for reciprocity, and yet, so there's a couple things that happen. One is, are our hearts warmed when you do it? Whose heart is warmed the most? Yeah, it feels so good. So the concept of being a community bank, are the credit unions going around giving to the community? I'm not seeing it. Okay, so one of the things that's so cool about being a community bank is we take a stand for our communities. We grow them. We get on the boards. We move things. We help them think clearly about opportunities. We show them what kind of commerce needs to come into town. We take a stand for that kind of thing. There's a lot of power in that. The other thing that's so powerful about giving is when you receive something, is the need for reciprocity like overwhelming? I mean, how many of these people who, when you gave the dollar to, I mean, they had to go chase you down and thank you, and so there had to be this whole experience. The need to give back and pay it forward is huge, and so it truly is the ultimate pay it forward experience in terms of, so when you're giving your top 100, when you're giving your top 1,000, when you're giving your seminars, when you're doing all those things, you're of the spirit that says we are a stand for making sure that everyone's lives that we touch are better. And when you're doing that, will they let your bank go under? Will they be dickering over 25 basis points on a CD? I mean, at some point it becomes ridiculous for them to be in that mindset because you've taught them abundance consciousness. If you have frontline employees who, when somebody calls in and says, what are your rates? And they give their rates, which consciousness are they in? Scarcity consciousness. They're like, oh yeah, there's only that much, there's just this, okay? And where do they get that scarcity consciousness from? This is the hard question, guys. Yes, that's right. We teach them that. And how do we teach them that? The rate conversation, ooh, we're cutting this, we're cutting that. It's always about that never enough, never enough. I got an email yesterday from an old friend of mine I've known ever since I moved to this town 17 years ago. She's a very smart marketer. And she worked for a bank years ago that was truly the best bank in this town, which was then sold. But I mean, this bank was just the bank that everybody talked about. They were the great bank. And she was a part of that team, so she knew what it was like to be a part of something grand. And then after that bank was bought out, she went to this other bank. And she had called me one time and said, man, we really need help here. You got to come help this team. This is just a mess. They don't get it. And so I said, well, get them on the phone and, let's talk. And so we had a phone conversation for an hour. And at the end of the hour, I just said to her, if I were you, I'd run as fast as you could. Because you have a bunch of people there. They were already planning for the demise of their bank. I mean, it was so obvious that it was just like, it's going to be a tough year. These were like the best of years. I mean, this was years ago when it was just, everything was booming and they were cutting down their expenses and cutting everything down. So this bank, for the last 3-4 years, every time I drive by it, they have a sign and every different letter is lit up, except for they always had at least 2 or 3 of their letters not lit. Okay. They didn't want to pay for humans, so they got one of those systems where the phone is answered by voicemail whenever you called in. This is a community bank, okay? And now I just got the email from her yesterday that she got laid off, and there was the 3rd round of layoffs. Well, guess what? That won't be the last, because they have the wrong consciousness from the very get-go. And it started with somebody not understanding the power of giving. Okay, it was all about me, cut those expenses, cut those expenses. It wasn't about how can we give more, how can we give more value, how do we support our community, how do we educate people on their finances, how do we just love them. Remember Jack Whittle? Anybody remember Jack Whittle? Jack Whittle was a consultant in the banking industry, and in fact when we started De Novo, we were like his star client, okay? So I used to always go speak at Jack's conferences because he would want to show off what we did at our bank. And Jack was about this tall and about this wide. You remember him to be that? I mean, the guy was different Jack Whittle? You just knew who he was. You never met him? Okay. Jack he was just love on wheels. He was a great guy. But one of the things he always said is you need to kiss your customers on their lips until they chap. Isn't that a great line? It's just a great line about just give and give and give and give and give and give a value. And and here we are nearly in 2010, and the vast majority of banks are still communicating with their clients. All they send out is a statement and the overdraft notices. Thanks so much for doing business with us, right? Okay? And so when you stand out and you give and give and give and give and give, what are they thinking? Holy smokes, somebody who gets it. But not only that, you're teaching them how to be. You're teaching them abundance. I'll tell you the best way to become a good retailing bank is to not look to see what other banks are doing. There's not a lot of creativity going on in the other banks. But if you go into the stores, these guys every day see the result of moving this kiosk over here. Like for instance, when you walk into a bank, there's a pattern you should be aware of. So when you walk in, right here on the right should be one of your best promotional areas, right there. Okay? And so I walk into a lot of banks and they got junk and magazines and whatever. It's just like boom, they missed the best opportunity because the brain comes in looking over here for what should I be doing. This is where your posters, your concept posters should be, that basically get them asking questions when they get to the teller station. So it shouldn't be, here's our rate board. Crazy, okay? Do not have your rate board there. In fact, if you have a rate board, if you could hide it in the bathroom, that would probably be ideal, okay? Keep them as, because you're teaching them to be scarcity thinkers. So don't take them there. So instead, have posters, concept posters that really take them along that path. And so we'll talk today too about your merchandising and having things on the counters that actually promote and instigate the questions. You want to get them asking the questions. You don't want to be like doing the hard sell through that stuff. You want to get them asking something about what's that all about, okay? So you want curiosity pieces all over the place that gets them going. Like State Farm had something years ago that was brilliant. On the side of their buildings, they had these schlocky little vinyl banners on the outside of their buildings, and it was a kid's handwriting that looked like it was on a chalkboard that said, "Today I start my college education fund. Today I start my college education fund. Today I start my college education fund." You could tell it was a kid's handwriting. Now, when somebody sees that, what do they think? What are they going to ask the teller? Well, how do you go about starting a college education fund? Okay, and when we're teaching your people how to do the triangle, where it's like, here's your liquidity money here, and then here's your financial freedom account, and then here are your long-term savings, and you allocate them by concept. You set up a different account for each, so you sweep from the checking account. Now it's like, oh, college education fund. Let's set something sweeping on a regular basis to get that thing going. Okay, so you're teaching them to do those right kind of things. I went into a salon not too long ago to get a haircut, and when I went to go pay for my haircut, they had just finished this huge renovation, and they'd made this salon really, really beautiful, and I kept thinking to myself, man, there's this recession going on, they're spending a ton of money right now making this thing really, really, really fancy. I wonder how they're financing this thing. And then I go up to the counter to pay for my, once you're a lender, I don't know about, every time I go into a business, I'm doing the analytics on how is this working financially. So I'm walking in, I'm thinking about that, and then I go to pay for my haircut, and they said, listen, if you buy a $300 gift certificate today, your haircut will be free. I thought, well, what's to lose on that deal? I mean, my hair keeps growing, I'll be back, right? And so, free haircut today, sure, good deal. So I spend the $300, and then I look back behind me. And they have this whole thing of hairsprays and hair gels and this and that. And then they have this whole brochure on massages and facials and whatever. And so I thought, well, as long as I'm here. So I signed up, and so before I left, I had blown $200, okay? And all I could think about was, now I get to come back and spend my next $100. And so it was like burning in my pocket, okay? I needed to be spending it. So I said to my husband when I came home, that was the most brilliant marketing. They paid for their whole darn building renovation in a couple weeks with people buying, everybody who came through, $300, and only 49 or 48% of gift certificates actually get used. Okay, but the people who want to use it, they're using it on high market products. They buy those products for like $3 and charge $25, okay? Brilliant from every angle. And see, every other salon is just moving through the steps and not thinking, just like banks are moving through the steps and not thinking. But one business strategy changes everything. So I want you thinking, what is that one business strategy this year that'll change everything? When they're zigging, how are you zagging? How are you playing a whole different game and thinking in a whole different way? Make sense?